Elon Musk has 10 known children, and none of them went through a normal school system. He pulled them out of a private school and built a classroom inside a rocket factory, a decision that's now growing into a project worth hundreds of millions. Stay with me to see why Musk believed regular school wasn't enough for his kids. Elon Musk's kids don't go to normal school, and the story of why starts with a hallway inside SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Back in 2014, Musk had 5 sons enrolled in one of the top private schools in Los Angeles. By most standards, that school was already elite, but Musk pulled all 5 of them out anyway. When asked why, he didn't hold back. He said they weren't doing the things he thought should be done. That's it. No long explanation, no drawn-out complaint about test scores or bullying, just a flat statement that the school wasn't teaching his kids the right way. So what did he do next? He didn't just transfer them to another private school. He built his own school from scratch on SpaceX's campus. He brought in a teacher named Josh Don to design the whole thing and run it. And Musk hired Don to teach a small group of students, mainly his own children and those of SpaceX employees, for free. Free tuition on a rocket company's campus, with class sizes so small that most public schools would never be able to replicate it. He called it Ad Astra. That's Latin for to the stars. And it wasn't a metaphor he threw on a plaque for decoration. It described exactly where the school was located and who it served. The Washington Post later described it as possibly the most exclusive school in the world. Here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't a normal school in almost any sense you'd recognize. Grades, foreign language studies, and music lessons were notably absent from the school's curriculum. No report cards, no French class, no band practice. If you walked in expecting rows of desks and a bell schedule, you'd have been in the wrong building entirely. Instead, students were split up not by age, but by ability. A Washington Post piece on the school called it a secret laboratory school for brilliant kids who love flamethrowers. Yes, flamethrowers. Students at Ad Astra reportedly built battling robots and tested them out with actual flame attachments, all as part of the curriculum. This was a school where kids were solving engineering problems most 8th graders never even touch. The environment wasn't just unconventional. It was described by outside observers in terms you'd expect from a startup, not an elementary school. Some of Musk's own kids reportedly learned alongside the children of SpaceX employees and some other high-profile Los Angeles kids, in an environment Ars Technica described as closer to a venture capital incubator than a traditional school. This is the part that answers the question right up front. Elon Musk's kids didn't go to normal school because he built them an entirely different one, hidden inside a rocket company, with no grades, no foreign languages, and flamethrower robots instead of a spelling bee. And that first experiment didn't stay contained to just his own family. It eventually spun into an online school, reaching hundreds of kids around the world. And then years later, into a $100 million campus in Texas that Musk is now trying to turn into an entire education system from preschool all the way to university. That's the shape of the story. Now let's break down exactly how it happened, piece by piece, starting with why Musk pulled his kids out of school in the first place and what he actually built to replace it. To understand why Elon Musk's kids don't go to normal school, you have to go back to what was actually happening in that Los Angeles private school before he pulled them out. Musk has never gone into extensive detail publicly about specific incidents, but the language he's used consistently points to one frustration. He didn't think the standard model of schooling, lecture, memorize, test, repeat, was preparing his kids for anything real. In Walter Isaacson's 2023 biography of Musk, Elon lays out the timeline himself. He says his kids went there until they were about 14, but then he thought they should be introduced to the real world for high school. Notice the phrasing there, the real world. That's a pretty telling choice of words from a man who had just spent years building his kids an artificial bubble of a school on a rocket company's campus. He saw Ad Astra as something separate from the real world, a controlled environment meant for a specific developmental window, and something to be phased out once that window closed. But back in 2014, the real world wasn't the concern yet. The concern was that traditional schooling, in his eyes, wasn't built around how kids actually learn or what they'd actually need. So he did something most parents can't even fantasize about doing. He hired a teacher to build a private curriculum from nothing and gave him one instruction. According to the school's own later account of its founding, Musk's only directive to Don was to make it great. No lesson plans handed down, no syllabus requirements, no state standards to hit. Just an open command to build something good. That's an almost unbelievable amount of freedom for an educator. Don wasn't constrained by school district requirements, standardized testing mandates, or even basic accreditation pressure. The school's own retrospective admits as much, saying they had no limitations of any mandated structure or curriculum. He could throw out anything that didn't work and keep only what did. So what did Don actually build? The core idea was to abandon age-based grade levels entirely. Instead of sorting kids by how many years they'd been alive, Ad Astra grouped them by ability level in each subject. A math-gifted 8-year-old could be sitting in the same lesson as an 11-year-old if that's where their skill level put them. One breakdown of the school's approach describes this as the first governing principle, catering the education to match aptitudes and abilities, rather than insisting that all students be grouped by grade, because different people love different things and so have different abilities at different times. The second principle cut even deeper into how the school approached knowledge itself. Instead of teaching tools in isolation, a class on how to use a screwdriver, a separate class on how to use a wrench. The school tried to teach directly to the problem the tool was meant to solve. The example that got used repeatedly was teaching how an engine works, rather than teaching each individual component as its own disconnected subject. That's the first principles thinking Musk has talked about for years in interviews about his businesses, just ported directly into a classroom. And the curriculum reflected that philosophy in ways that would look completely alien to a normal school administrator. There were no grades handed out, no A's, no B's, no GPA. There was no foreign language instruction. There was no music program. 3 subjects that form the backbone of almost every accredited school in America were simply not there. Grades, foreign language studies, and music lessons were notably absent from the school's curriculum. In their place were things you wouldn't find in any state curriculum guide. Students worked through what the school called conundrums, open-ended scenarios without a single correct answer, designed specifically to force disagreement and debate among students. Ad Astra and Astronova use various open-ended scenarios called conundrums that encourage constructive disagreement. These weren't warm-up exercises before the real lesson. They were treated as central to what the school was trying to accomplish, teaching kids how to think through ambiguous problems where adults themselves might disagree on the right approach. And then there was the robotics work that made headlines. Kids built machines designed to fight one another, and yes, some of those machines came equipped with flamethrowers. It sounds almost like a joke, but it was documented directly by reporters who visited or interviewed people connected to the school. That's the detail that stuck in a lot of people's minds. When this story first broke publicly back in 2018, years after the school had already been operating quietly out of public view. Because that's another key piece of this. Ad Astra wasn't advertised. It wasn't listed publicly. It didn't have a marketing website trying to recruit families, and reporters had to dig to even confirm its existence. It operated for years as what one outlet called a secret laboratory school. Musk wasn't trying to build a brand around this. He was building a private solution to a private problem. What his own kids, and the kids of his employees, actually needed to learn. That's important context for what comes next, because eventually those kids grew up. And when Musk's own children hit the age where he felt they needed something closer to a conventional environment, Ad Astra's entire reason for existing on the SpaceX campus started to evaporate. The school left SpaceX campus in June 2020 when Musk's children graduated. That's the hard stop. It wasn't a gradual wind down or a slow loss of interest. The moment the specific kids it was built for moved on, so did the school itself, at least in that physical form. But here's the twist that most people miss. The school didn't just shut its doors and disappear. the teachers who had spent years building the curriculum weren't ready to let the whole experiment die with the SpaceX lease. So they took everything they developed, the ability-based grouping, the conundrums, the project-based structure, and turned it into something new, an entirely online school called AstroNova. Josh Dahn, who co-founded Ad Astra at SpaceX, now runs a fully online version of the venture called AstroNova. This wasn't a hobby project. According to reporting from the New York Times, Musk and Dahn actually split the intellectual property of everything they'd built right down the middle. According to the New York Times, Musk and Dahn split intellectual property of the school 50-50. That's a real business arrangement, not a casual handshake. Whatever had been created inside that laboratory school on the SpaceX campus was valuable enough that both men wanted a documented claim to it. And AstroNova didn't stay small. What started as a handful of SpaceX employees' kids and Musk's own sons ballooned into something with actual global reach. As of a recent count, the school says it accepts students ages 11, 18, and has an enrollment of 315 students from 45 countries. Compare that to fewer than 40 kids crammed into a rocket company's classrooms just a few years earlier, and you can see how much this thing expanded once it went digital. The subject offerings got stranger and more specific the bigger it grew. This wasn't your standard algebra and English online school. Reports describe course names like mathematical biology and poetry for scientists. Sitting right there on the same schedule, one outlet summed up the pitch of the school as an experimental online school for kind, independent, and daring kids, offering an unconventional curriculum that includes battling robots with flamethrowers. So even in its online form, the flamethrower robots didn't get left behind. They became part of the brand. Now, here's a detail that surprises a lot of people once they hear the price tag. Despite operating entirely online, without a physical campus to maintain, AstroNova charges tuition that rivals some of the most expensive private schools in the country. Despite high tuition fees, reportedly up to $33,000 per year, AstroNova operates as a nonprofit and has experienced financial losses. Even with families paying that much, the school still wasn't breaking even. One British tabloid reported the school lost nearly $400,000 in 1 year, equating to about $2,000 per student, even while charging $2,100 per hour for classes. That's an eye-watering hourly rate for instruction, and the school was still losing money on it. Why would a school lose money while charging that much? The answer comes down to how deliberately small and specialized everything stayed. Instead of scaling class sizes the way normal online education platforms do to cut costs, AstroNova kept things boutique, small classes, specialized instructors pulled from cutting-edge fields, and constant curriculum turnover. According to the school's own materials, AstroNova creates new courses 3x a year, and students typically take between 4 and 16 class hours per week. That's a lot of overhead for a nonprofit relying on tuition alone. And by this point, Musk himself had mostly stepped back. He wasn't running the day-to-day of AstroNova. Dahn and two co-founders, Dr. Rosemary Rohde and Tara Safronoff, took over actual operations. The school is currently run by Josh Dahn and co-founders Dr. Rosemary Rohde and Tara Safronoff. Musk's name wasn't attached to daily decisions anymore, but his influence over the founding philosophy, first principles thinking, ability grouping, no traditional grades, was baked into everything the school still did. That influence didn't stay contained to AstroNova's few hundred students either. The ideas Musk and Dahn cooked up in that SpaceX classroom found their way into millions of other classrooms entirely by accident. Through an unexpected partnership, conundrums have been used in millions of classrooms in partnership with ClassDojo. That's a wild jump from a secretive lab school for a handful of rich kids to a teaching method now used by teachers all over the world who've probably never even heard Musk's name attached to it. On top of that, another spin-off called Synthesis emerged from the same root system. Synthesis, a venture-backed educational technology company founded in 2020, is also based on the work of AstroNova. So by the time the SpaceX version of the school closed its doors, its DNA had already scattered into at least 3 different directions: an online school, a classroom activity used worldwide, and a separate venture-backed tech company. That's a lot of legacy for a project that started because one billionaire didn't like his kids' homework. But Musk wasn't done building schools. Years later, he'd go back to the drawing board. This time, not for a handful of SpaceX employees' kids, but for an entire region with a budget nearly 3 times the size of what most small colleges operate on annually. By the mid-2020s, Musk had already relocated a huge chunk of his business empire to Texas. SpaceX, the Boring Company, and eventually X all set up shop in a stretch of Bastrop County outside Austin. And once that corporate footprint existed, Musk went right back to the same instinct that started this whole story a decade earlier: build a school right in the middle of it. This new Ad Astra, reviving the exact same name from the SpaceX days, opened its doors in Bastrop, just a short drive from Musk's compound. Local reporting described the location plainly. This is Ad Astra, a private school for kids ages 3 to 6, opened right around the corner from Elon Musk's massive corporate compound in Bastrop County, which already houses offices for SpaceX, the Boring Company, and soon X. But this time, the scale wasn't a secret handful of students. This time, there was money behind it, a lot of it. Reports pegged the initial investment at roughly $100 million, funneled through Musk's own charitable structure. Musk, who is co-leading President-elect Donald Trump's Doge, invested $100 million in the school via his X Foundation. That's not pocket change for a preschool. That's the kind of funding normally reserved for university endowments, not a handful of toddlers learning to button their own shirts. And speaking of buttoning shirts, that's literally part of the curriculum. Alongside science and math, the school teaches what it calls practical life skills. In this stage, kids will learn about language, math, geometry, history, geography, science, technology, music, art, and PE. And they will also be introduced to social and emotional concepts like environmental and cultural awareness, as well as practical life skills like sweeping, buttoning, and folding clothes. Notice something different here from the original Ad Astra. Music is actually listed this time. A subject Musk left out entirely at SpaceX made its way back in for the Texas version. The overall structure borrows heavily from an entirely different educational tradition than the freewheeling no-grades approach of the original school. This version pulls from Montessori. The initial curriculum pulls heavily from a Montessori-inspired playbook of individualized exploration, and the school's website promises students a course of study delivered in a progressive learning environment. It's being run day-to-day not by Don or anyone connected to the original project, but by an outside operator. It will be run by Greg Merrick, CEO of Explore Education, a firm that partners with US-based companies to deliver Montessori-style programs. Even Musk's name doesn't appear on the paperwork this time. There's a deliberate distance built into the whole structure. Musk's name isn't on the school's application or its website, and it isn't even on the paperwork of a nonprofit that reported total assets of more than $200 million at the end of 2022. But his foundation provided the seed money, his top advisors are leading the venture, and Musk's influence is everywhere. So what does that influence actually look like in practice? For one, it shows up in his public comments about how education should work. He's floated the idea repeatedly that learning should feel less like homework and more like entertainment. Education should be as close to a video game as possible, Musk has said. That's a wildly different starting philosophy from Montessori's century-old traditions of quiet, self-directed exploration. And yet somehow both threads are running through the same school at the same time. The scale of this project, at least on paper, dwarfs anything Musk built before. This isn't meant to stay a tiny preschool tucked behind a farmhouse gate. Records show an entire system of education, from pre-K to college, is being created in Musk's image, and it starts right here in rural Central Texas. The plan reportedly includes not just an elementary school, but a full secondary track, and eventually a university. All funded through the same foundation, Ad Astra then moved its operations to Texas, according to the school's 2021 nonprofit paperwork. Physically, though, the current reality is a lot more modest than the ambition behind it. Reporters who visited described something closer to a converted rural home than a campus. From the outside, nothing appears to be special about the house at the end of Earhart Road. It looks like many of the other ranches that dot this rural stretch of highway, with a simple white facade, black iron gate, and a lone star adorning the cut-glass door. In its current form, the school is tiny. In its current form, Ad Astra can accommodate 21 students, according to its permit. 21 kids. For a $100 million investment tied to plans for K-12 and a university. That gap between the funding and the current headcount is exactly what's drawn scrutiny from education researchers watching this unfold. And it's also what's fueled speculation about what Musk is actually trying to build. And why? So why would someone worth hundreds of billions of dollars pour $100 million into a school that currently holds barely 24 kids? Education researchers who've studied billionaire-funded schools have some pointed theories, and none of them involve Musk trying to make money. Josh Cowan, a professor of education policy at Michigan State University, was blunt about the economics. He pointed out that the margins on these schools are very thin, and Elon Musk is one of the richest men in the world. In other words, this was never going to be a profit center. Cowan's read on the actual motive lines up with a pattern seen across other billionaire-funded education projects, using a school as a vehicle to spread a particular worldview. He said it's more plausible that Musk is doing what most billionaires do when they get involved in education projects, aiming to promote their values in society by inculcating them in children. The tricky part, according to Cowan, is that Musk's actual educational philosophy doesn't sit neatly on one side of any obvious ideological line. He described it as fairly nebulous. But Musk hasn't stayed quiet on at least two topics that are politically charged in American schools right now: how gender identity gets handled in classrooms, and how race gets taught. Still, he has offered his perspective on two issues that are polarizing in U.S. schools today: gender identity and how race and racism are portrayed in classrooms. He's also gone after the federal agency overseeing education directly, claiming at one point that the current education department is basically paying people to hate America. Interestingly, none of that political rhetoric actually shows up on the school's own materials. The public-facing pitch for Ad Astra in Texas sticks entirely to STEM buzzwords and skill-building language, staying carefully neutral. Even so, Ad Astra's website doesn't make mention of those issues. The school's approach is centered around hands-on, project-based learning, offering a progressive learning environment that emphasizes the integration of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics into its curriculum. There's a second theory floating around too, and it's less about ideology and more about business logistics. Jeffrey Hennig, another education researcher quoted in the reporting, suggested Musk might see the school less as a passion project and more as an employee perk, with tax advantages attached. While the school's application form notes that admissions are open to all children, it's possible that Musk sees Ad Astra as a way to recruit and retain employees. He's a businessman who sees this as a way to create a benefit for his employees, but have it subsidized by things like education savings accounts, referencing Texas Governor Greg Abbott's proposal to give families tax dollars for private school expenses. That policy backdrop matters a lot here, because Musk's project isn't happening in a vacuum. Texas has been actively pushing to funnel public money toward private education. These plans come as Texas is poised to approve a policy that would direct public money to private schools, and as proposals to expand private school choice gain momentum at the federal level. Governor Abbott has publicly backed Musk's venture, tying it directly to his broader complaints about public schools. In 2023, Abbott posted that at least Musk's schools would be educating students on skills actually applicable in the workforce rather than pushing woke ideologies. Hennig also raised a warning sign that's easy to miss if you're just looking at the funding numbers. If this were really meant to be a scalable business, You'd expect Musk to be opening more locations quickly, not just one small farmhouse campus. Hennig doesn't see Ad Astra as a business venture meant to make money. If that were the case, Musk would likely start to open more locations. Instead, celebrity-founded schools tend to follow a familiar arc. Hennig described it this way: they're often facilitated by a naive view of how easy it would be to outshine the competition, and the follow-through tends to fizzle. As he put it, these projects start off with a lot of attention, and then they kind of fade or drift. When it turns out that these star-created schools don't prove to be star education performers, Musk isn't alone in this space either. Plenty of other high-profile figures have tried the same experiment with mixed results. Musk is among several high-profile individuals venturing into education, with other celebrities like Mark Zuckerberg, Will Smith, Pitbull, and Oprah Winfrey also launching educational projects, often aiming to offer innovative alternatives to traditional schooling. None of those, notably, have grown into a plan for an entire K-12 to university pipeline the way Musk's project is being described. Critics from more traditional education backgrounds have taken issue with the underlying theory of learning Musk keeps repeating in interviews. The idea that skills like critical thinking can be taught in the abstract, separate from deep subject knowledge. One piece from the Fordham Institute argued directly against that premise, saying factual knowledge, not abstract skills, determine our ability to think critically, and these inherent aptitudes grow more skillful with the application of specific content knowledge. Their broader argument was that Musk's model works beautifully in a hothouse environment stocked with SpaceX engineers' kids, but wouldn't necessarily hold up once you tried to run it at the scale of an actual school district. They put it plainly: his experiments may succeed on SpaceX grounds with the children of SpaceX employees, with all of the cultural capital that comes with such an upbringing, but would almost certainly explode on liftoff, where they launched at scale. All of this, the ideology question, the employee perk theory, the tax angle, the skepticism from career educators, sits directly underneath the calm STEM-branded language on Ad Astra's public website. Whatever Musk's real motive is, it's clearly bigger than just wanting his own kids to enjoy school more. And that brings us to where all of this actually stands today, and what it means for the kids who are living through it right now. So here's where all of this lands. More than a decade after Musk first pulled his sons out of that Los Angeles private school, the original problem he set out to solve, kids not being challenged, not being taught the way he thought they should be, seems, by his own account, to have actually worked for his family. He said his kids love the environment he built for them so much that his kids now complain that vacations are too long and that they want to go back to school. That's a strange kind of endorsement, but it's a genuine one. A parent noting that his children were actively asking to return to classrooms rather than dreading them. Astronova, the online descendant of that original SpaceX classroom, has settled into its permanent shape. After weighing whether to build a physical campus once it left SpaceX, the team decided to stay fully digital, expanding to 60 students in its first year on its own. After leaving the SpaceX campus, Astronova looked at a number of options for a physical facility, but ultimately decided to permanently be an online-only school for 5th-8th grade, adding 60 students for the 2020-2021 school year. From those 60 kids, it's now grown into the multi-continent operation it is today, still running the same conundrums and project-based courses that started as an improvised experiment for a handful of engineers' children. One thing that's changed is how open the school has become about sharing what it built. Rather than guarding its methods as some kind of exclusive advantage, the team chose to release much of its material publicly. It turns out Astronova is not proud of how selective their program is. They want every child to have an Astronova-style education, so they open-sourced the curriculum for many of their classes, including 3DM and Conundrums, and have also spun out Synthesis and offer it independently. That's a notable shift from where this whole story started, a secretive school that reporters had to track down through leaked documents and off-the-record tips. Meanwhile, in Bastrop, the Texas version of Ad Astra is still finding its footing. The preschool is operating, The elementary track is still being built out, and the university Musk has floated remains firmly in the someday category rather than anything concrete. Tax filings from Musk's foundations show plans to expand Ad Astra into an elementary and secondary school as well as a university. Whether that materializes depends on a mix of things well outside Musk's control. Texas legislation on school funding, enrollment numbers, and whether the small staff running day-to-day operations can scale up without losing whatever made the original version work in the first place. There's also a real financial question mark hanging over all of this. The online Astronova, despite charging some of the steepest tuition in private education, has consistently run in the red. And nothing about the new Texas campus suggests that problem magically disappears once you add a Montessori license and a $100 million backer. Subsidized first-year tuition is nice for the families who get in, but subsidies don't run forever, and a nonprofit burning cash on a boutique student body eventually needs a plan beyond "the founder is rich." For the kids actually enrolled in either version of these schools right now, though, the day-to-day experience is remarkably specific to Musk's original obsessions: ability grouping instead of grade levels, real-world problems instead of worksheets, debate-driven conundrums instead of quizzes. Whether it's a toddler in Bastrop folding laundry as part of a Montessori-inspired lesson plan, or a 14-year-old halfway across the world logging into an Astronova class on mathematical biology, they're all touching some branch of the same tree that started in a converted room at SpaceX headquarters over 10 years ago. And that's really the through line here. Musk didn't build one school, he built a philosophy and then let it mutate. It went from a secret classroom for his own 5 sons, into an online experiment, reaching students on 5 continents, into a $100 million bet on rebuilding education from preschool all the way up. In the same stretch of Texas, where he's already rebuilt rockets, cars, and social media. None of it looks like a normal school, because none of it was ever meant to. Whether the university ever gets built, whether the Texas campus scales past 21 kids, whether Astronova ever breaks even. Those are all still open questions. But the answer to why Musk's kids never sat in a normal classroom has been sitting in plain sight since 2014. He simply decided to build something else instead, and he hasn't stopped building it since. Astronova School, Wikipedia. Elon Musk is opening a school for young students. Here's what we know about it. EdWeek. An education ecosystem is being built in Elon Musk's image, Texas Tribune. Musk's Ad Astra STEM school for kids is about to start class, Digital CXO. Elon Musk's new $100 million school gets permit, Newsweek. Elon Musk linked to new private school in Central Texas, KUT Radio. To the stars, Elon Musk's new progressive $100 million STEM-focused school gets the green light in Texas, Yahoo Finance. Elon should stick to cars, rockets, and tech, Fordham Institute. How to send your child to a school like Elon Musk's. Astronova School official site.